Now, for the longest time, Africa has prided itself with being one of the world's lowest carbon emitters. But as the world journeys to net zero emissions by 2050, as per the Paris Agreement, a new study has found that over the last 10 years, the African continent has released more carbon than it stores. This will have consequences for greenhouse gas budgets. Co-author of the study, Yolandi Ernst, who's a researcher at the Wits Global Change Institute, joins us with more insights. Yolandi, a pleasure. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. Thank you for having me.
So, like I would have said in my intro, for the longest time, we have gone to say that we're very low emitters compared to the rest of the globe. I think that is still true, but of course, we are seeing a bit of a shift here in terms of how much we're emitting versus, how much we're storing. Let's just talk about that.
So yes, Africa has for a long time been very good to the world. And we have been taking up some of the excess carbon dioxide from the atmosphere. So we were regarded as a sink for quite a long time. And that was quite unique for Africa to do that. But now, although we are still a low emitting continent, we are not able to take up that much carbon anymore, just because we are emitting excess of carbon dioxide by ourselves.
Let's talk about how that is happening. Where are the biggest source of these emissions?
So the largest sources from our study seem to be the fossil fuel emissions. It's contributing about 4% to the global fossil fuel emissions, which is still pretty much what it was previously. One of the larger concerns are our land use emissions, and that is specifically where we are transforming our lands for things like agriculture to produce food, where we are basically taking out some of the carbon stocks and the carbon that's been stored within the ground.
I want to speak about the issue of agriculture, Yolandi, because that is of concern, I guess, here, because what it does tell us that we need to find an intricate balance between food security and producing our own food, and then also emissions. How do we do that? Are there new innovative ways of farming that we're yet to adopt?
Yes, I think there's a lot of hope and there's a lot of things that are happening. I think the most important is that we should invest in climate smart agriculture, things like mixed cattle wildlife systems, improving soil, and conserving our natural resources within our agricultural systems. There are various ways to do it. And the biggest thing for us is to do the projects, get the funding, and roll this out at scale. So it's always about the money. But I think, the world is realizing that, they have to invest in this. And I think our study has really contributed to mainly, have that policy changed and in place.
And I must ask you here, the complexities of being a continent that is still trying to develop and also then being carbon neutral. Are there case studies around the world where we have seen that development, was increasing steadily while the carbon footprint was low, reasonable, and maybe even neutral?
Not really that I'm aware of. I think Africa has a few countries that is still, not emitting too much, which is carbon neutral. But as we see as a collective, Africa is now, emitting more than we can store. I think the important thing to note is that we should be working with the globe and the globe should be working with Africa to invest so that we can keep on, sinking the carbon and also perhaps in the future go to a point where we are a sink instead of a source.
Yolandi, you mentioned something earlier. You said it's always about the money. And I think for me, that's absolutely true. We've seen at COP26 and COP27 and even COP28, some financial commitments are being made. Not all of them are coming to fruition here. But of course, we know that the conversation is being had on a global level. Could we be doing more to put pressure on more developed nations here to honor their commitments to funding Africa's energy transition here that would see us emitting less, a carbon, greenhouse gases, that is rather?
I think the important thing is that we should have these type of studies that we have done. I think what's important is to note that this was the first time that this type of study was led by African people. And, you know, we are the African people that live here and we know what's going on. So, developing that would also contribute to better policy making and the taking up of these type of information into the policy development. It's important to keep on doing this. I have seen in the last 2 weeks so much proposals from international funders that where people are actually trying to fund these type of projects and, trying to increase the observation network, trying to make plans to invest in these types of things. So the money is there. I think, the globe is really interested in helping Africa because Africa will also be able to help them then.
Well, Yolandi, an absolute pleasure. Thank you so much for speaking to us this afternoon. That was Yolandi Ernst. She's researcher at the Wits Global Change Institute.